There's this specific kind of pain that comes with loving someone who doesn't love you back. Not the kind that announces itself loudly. The kind that sits in your chest every single day, quiet and heavy, like a weight you can't put down. You wake up with it. You go to sleep with it. And somewhere in between, you're just trying to get through the day without thinking about him. But you always do. Always. I wish he loved me. 4 words that play on repeat in your head when you're alone. 4 words you've never said out loud because saying them makes it real. Makes it hurt more. Makes you feel pathetic for still hoping after all this time. After all the signs. After everything that should have told you to walk away. But you don't walk away. You stay. You wait. You hope. Because maybe, just maybe, one day he'll see you the way you see him. It's the beginning. When you first realize, it doesn't start all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you about unrequited love. It's not like you meet someone and immediately know they'll break your heart without ever really having it. It builds slowly, piece by piece, moment by moment, until one day you look up and realize you're in deeper than you ever meant to be. At first, it's just attraction, harmless, normal. You think he's cute, he makes you laugh, there's something about the way he talks that makes you want to listen. You start noticing little things, the way his eyes crinkle when he smiles, how his voice sounds different when he's tired, the specific way he runs his hand through his hair when he's thinking about something. And those observations, they feel innocent at first, just paying attention, just being interested, just enjoying someone's company. You tell yourself it's nothing serious, just a crush. Something light and easy that'll fade on its own when the newness wears off. Except, it doesn't fade. It grows. You start looking forward to seeing him. Your day feels a little brighter when he's around. You find yourself wondering what he's doing when he's not with you. If he's thinking about you too. If he notices the little things about you the way you notice everything about him. That's when the hope sneaks in. Quiet and dangerous. It tells you maybe there's something here. Maybe he feels it too. Maybe you're not imagining the way he looks at you sometimes, or how he laughs a little harder at your jokes, or the fact that he seems to find reasons to talk to you. You start reading into everything. Or a text that says, "Good morning," becomes evidence that you're on his mind. Him asking about your day means he cares. When he touches your arm while talking, it lingers in your mind for hours, days. You replay it over and over, analyzing every second, trying to decode what it meant. Research shows that nearly 93% of people experience unrequited love at some point in their lives. It's one of the most common forms of heartbreak. But knowing that doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make you feel less alone when you're lying in bed at night, staring at your phone, hoping he'll text. The denial phase is probably the worst part of the beginning. Because deep down, some part of you already knows. You can feel it in the way he talks about other girls, the way he never quite closes the distance between you, and how he's comfortable being close, but not too close, never too close. But you ignore it. You have to, because acknowledging it means giving up the one thing that's been keeping you going, the hope that maybe, possibly, eventually, he might feel the same way. So you make excuses. He's just busy. He's not ready for a relationship right now. He's dealing with stuff and needs space. He doesn't realize what's between you yet, but he will. He just needs time. You tell yourself these things like they're facts instead of the stories you need to believe to keep holding on. Studies on the psychology of unrequited love show that people often continue to invest emotionally even when there's clear evidence their feelings aren't reciprocated. It's called irrational escalation. Your brain gets stuck in a pattern of hope and disappointment, and hope and disappointment. But the hope always feels stronger because that's what you want to be true. You start noticing the small signs you should have seen earlier, like how he never really asks deep questions about your life. Surface level stuff, sure. How was your day? What did you do this weekend? Did you see that thing on social media? But he never asks what keeps you up at night, what you're scared of, what you dream about when you let yourself dream big. He doesn't remember the little things you tell him. You mentioned your favorite song and he forgot. You told him about something important happening at work and he never brought it up again. Meanwhile, you remember everything, every story, every detail, every throwaway comment he's made because you hold on to his words like they're precious. The effort isn't equal when you're always the one reaching out first, suggesting plans, trying to make conversation, and he responds, sure, but he never initiates, never seeks you out on his own. You're available to him, but he's not available to you. Not really. Not in the way you need him to be. But you don't want to see it yet. So you don't. You keep interpreting neutral actions as interest. Keep finding reasons to stay hopeful. Keep telling yourself that the connection you feel is real and mutual, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. There's this moment, though. This specific moment when you start to realize something's off. For me, it was watching him light up when someone else walked in the room. The way his whole face changed. The way he straightened up, smiled bigger, became more animated. And I thought, he's never looked at me like that. And he's never lit up for me the way he just lit up for her. That's when the first real crack appears, when you see him care about someone the way you care about him, except it's not you he's caring about, and you feel this thing in your chest, this tight, heavy, sinking thing that makes it hard to breathe for a second. But even then, even with that crack forming, you still don't let yourself fully accept it, because accepting it means losing him, and you're not ready to lose him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So you stay in the beginning phase. That weird space where you kind of know, but you don't really know. Where you're aware, but in denial. Where the truth is sitting right there in front of you, but you keep your eyes just slightly closed so you don't have to look at it directly. According to attachment theory, and people with anxious attachment styles are more likely to experience unrequited love. They learned early that love isn't guaranteed, that people they care about might not always be there, so they cling harder to connections even when those connections aren't healthy or reciprocated. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's something in your past that makes you hold on to people who don't hold on back. Maybe you learned that love means fighting for it, working for it, proving you're worth it. So that's what you do. You fight and work and try to prove your worth to someone who should see it without you having to convince them. But you don't think about all that in the beginning. You just think about him, about the way he makes you feel when things are good, about the possibility of what you could be if he just saw you, really saw you. Yet you think about all the conversations you've had, the laughs you've shared, the moments that felt special, even if they probably weren't special to him. You hold on to those moments like evidence, like proof that this isn't one-sided. Like if you collect enough of these little pieces, they'll add up to something real. The beginning is full of hope, painful, dangerous, beautiful hope. Hope that makes you wake up every morning thinking maybe today's the day something changes. Maybe today he realizes. Maybe today you stop being just a friend and become something more. You don't know yet that hope is going to be the thing that hurts you most, that it's going to keep you stuck in this place longer than you should stay, that you're going to look back months or years from now and wish you'd walked away in the beginning when the crack first appeared, instead of staying and watching it become a canyon. But that's not something you can understand when you're in it. When you're in the beginning, all you can see is him, and all you can feel is this overwhelming wish that he'd love you back, that your feelings would be enough to make him feel something too, that wanting it this badly would somehow make it happen. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work that way. Love doesn't care how much you want it, how hard you try, how perfect you think you could be together. One-sided love is still one-sided, no matter how much effort you put in from your side. But you don't know that yet. In the beginning, you still believe that love is enough, that your love is enough, that if you just hold on a little longer, try a little harder, be a little better, maybe he'll finally love you back. Living in the in-between, there's this space you end up living in. Not quite together, not quite apart, not quite friends, not quite more. It's this weird in-between place where you exist in his life, but not the way you want to, not the way you need to. And God, living in that space, is exhausting. You're close enough to him to know things about his life, close enough that he texts you when he's bored or wants to talk, close enough to be part of his routine in some small way. But you're not close enough to matter, not close enough to be a priority, not close enough to be the person he thinks of first. You're stuck in this constant state of almost enough, almost important, almost loved, that almost everything you want to be, but never quite getting there. And that almost, it kills you slowly, piece by piece, day by day, because hope lives in almost. That's the problem with the in-between. You can't fully let go because there are just enough signs to make you think maybe. Maybe if you wait a little longer. Maybe if you're patient. Maybe if you prove yourself. Maybe. Research on unrequited love shows that people often experience more distress than those in reciprocated relationships because of the constant uncertainty. When you're in a real relationship, you know where you stand. When you're completely rejected, you know where you stand. But when you're in the in-between, you don't know anything. And that not knowing, that uncertainty, that's what makes it so hard to move forward. You start reading into every interaction like it's a puzzle you can solve. He sent 3 texts in a row. That must mean something. He used an exclamation point. He's excited to talk to you. He asked what you're up to tonight. Maybe he wants to see you. He liked your photo from 2 days ago. He's thinking about you. And then you analyze the gaps too. He didn't text back for 4 hours. He's losing interest. He left you on read. You said something wrong. He posted on his story but didn't reply to your message. You're not important enough. He made plans with other people but not you. You don't matter to him the way they do. Your brain becomes this constant loop of analysis and interpretation. Every single thing he does or doesn't do gets examined from every angle. You're looking for clues, searching for evidence, and trying to figure out if he feels even a fraction of what you feel. The hardest part about living in the in-between is that you get just enough to keep hoping, but never enough to actually be satisfied. It's like being hungry and getting one bite of food. It doesn't fill you up. It just reminds you how hungry you are and makes you want more. He gives you attention, but it's sporadic, unpredictable. Sometimes he's all in, texting you all day, making you feel like you matter. And you think, okay, something's changing. Something's different. This is it. But then he disappears for days and you're left wondering what you did wrong. Why the sudden distance? Why he went from warm to cold so fast? That's the thing about intermittent reinforcement. Psychologists have found it's one of the most powerful ways to create emotional attachment. And when someone gives you unpredictable rewards, your brain gets addicted to trying to figure out how to get more of those rewards. You become obsessed with understanding the pattern, even when there isn't one. Slot machines work the same way. You keep pulling the lever because sometimes you win, and you never know when that win is coming, so you can't stop. You're convinced the next pull might be the big one. Just one more try. Just one more attempt. Just one more message, and maybe this time he'll respond the way you want him to. Living in the in-between means constantly adjusting your expectations. You learn to be grateful for breadcrumbs. A good morning text feels like a gift. Him laughing at something you said feels like progress. Getting 30 minutes of his time feels like a victory. You shrink yourself to fit into whatever space he makes available. He can only hang out for an hour. You'll take it. He can only text between things. That's fine. He's not ready for anything serious. Okay? You'll wait. You'll be whatever he needs you to be if it means you get to stay close to him. But that shrinking, it costs you something. Your self-respect starts to erode. Your boundaries become blurry. You start accepting less than you deserve because less is still something, and something is better than nothing, right? Except it's not better. It's worse. Because something keeps you stuck. Nothing would force you to move on, but something, just enough something, to keep hoping. That's the most painful place to be. You start planning your life around the possibility of him. You keep your schedule open in case he wants to do something. You turn down other opportunities because what if he finally asks you out and you're busy? You hold yourself back from fully connecting with other people because you're saving that emotional space for him. Your friends start noticing. They see you checking your phone constantly. They watch you light up when he finally texts, then watch you deflate when hours pass with no response. They see you making excuses for him, defending him, explaining away behavior that shouldn't need explaining, and they try to tell you, gently at first. Are you sure he feels the same way? Maybe you should keep your options open. I just don't want to see you get hurt. But you don't want to hear it. You can't hear it. Because hearing it means acknowledging that you might be wrong about him. About this. About everything you've built up in your head. And so you brush off their concerns. Tell them they don't see what you see. They don't know him like you do. They don't understand the connection. And maybe that's true. Maybe they don't see the little moments that feel special to you. But maybe they see the big picture more clearly than you can from inside it. Research shows that when people are emotionally invested in someone, they tend to focus on positive information and filter out negative information. It's called confirmation bias. You see what you want to see and ignore what you don't want to see. Your brain literally helps you stay in denial because facing reality is too painful. Living in the in-between also means constantly comparing yourself to other people in his life. You notice who he makes time for, who he responds to faster, who he talks about, who makes him smile like that. And every comparison is a tiny cut, another little piece of evidence that you're not special, not different, not the one. You watch him be present with other people in ways he's never present with you. You see him make effort that he doesn't make for you. You witness him being thoughtful, romantic, interested, all the things you wish he'd be with you, except he's being those things with someone else. And that hurts in a specific way, because it proves that he's capable of what you want. He just doesn't want it with you. It's not that he can't make time. He makes it for them. It's not that he doesn't like relationships. He just doesn't want one with you. It's not that he's bad at showing he cares. He shows it to other people just fine. The problem isn't him being incapable. The problem is him not wanting to do those things for you. And somehow that's worse, because if he couldn't, you could blame circumstances, timing, bad luck. But when he can and he doesn't, you can only blame yourself, or blame the fact that you're not enough to make him want to try. You start wondering what they have that you don't, why he chooses them over you. What's wrong with you that makes you so easy to overlook? The self-doubt creeps in slowly, then all at once, and suddenly you're questioning everything about yourself. Meanwhile, you're still in the in-between, still hoping, still waiting, still convincing yourself that patience will pay off, that loyalty will matter, that eventually he'll wake up and realize what he's had all along. Studies on unrequited love show that people can spend months or even years in this state, holding on to someone who isn't really holding on back, waiting for a change that might never come, living in the gap between what is and what could be. And the truth that nobody wants to say out loud is that most of the time, nothing changes. The in-between doesn't magically become a relationship. The almost doesn't become something real. The hope you're holding on to, it doesn't manifest into the love you want so desperately. But when you're living in it, you can't see that, can't accept it, can't let it go. Because letting go means admitting it was never going to happen. Admitting you wasted time on someone who was never going to love you back. Admitting that all those moments that felt special to you maybe weren't special at all, so you stay. In the in-between. In the almost. In the hope that one day, somehow, everything you feel will become something he feels too. Even though, deep down, beneath all the hope and denial and wishing, a small voice keeps whispering that he already knows how you feel. He's always known. And if he wanted to be with you, he would be. No matter what else is going on in his life, no matter the timing, no matter the circumstances, if he wanted you, he'd choose you. The fact that he hasn't, that says everything you need to know, but you're not ready to hear that yet. Not when you're still living in the in-between, still believing that almost can become everything if you just hold on a little longer. The weight of one-sided love has a weight to it, a physical, tangible weight that you carry everywhere. And the thing is, you're carrying it alone. That's what makes it so heavy. Not just the love itself, but the fact that there's nobody on the other side helping you hold it. You're doing all the work, all the trying, all the reaching out, all the planning, all the caring, and he's just existing, living his life, showing up when it's convenient, leaving when it's not, never having to think too hard about you because he knows you'll still be there whether he puts in effort or not. That's exhausting. Loving someone who doesn't love you back is one of the most tiring things you can do, because you're constantly giving to someone who isn't giving back, pouring from a cup that never gets refilled, investing emotional energy into something that yields no return. Research on one-sided relationships shows that the person giving more experiences higher levels of stress and emotional burnout than people in balanced relationships. Your body literally reacts to the imbalance. The constant stress of uncertainty, the emotional labor of always being the one to initiate, the mental exhaustion of analyzing every interaction, it all takes a physical toll. You start feeling it in your body. Tension in your shoulders from holding on to hope so tightly. Tightness in your chest when he doesn't text back. Exhaustion from all the mental energy you spend thinking about him. Anxiety that sits in your stomach like a knot that won't untie. And you're the only one carrying this. He's not thinking about you the way you're thinking about him. He's not stressed about whether you like him back. He's not analyzing your messages looking for hidden meaning. He's just living his life, and you happen to be in it somewhere, but you're not the center of it, not even close. That realization, when it hits, it's brutal. And to understand that something consuming your entire emotional world is barely a blip on his radar. That you matter so much less to him than he matters to you, that this thing that feels huge and important and life-changing to you is just casual to him. Easy, forgettable. You're always the one reaching out first, always the one making plans, always the one checking in. And at first, you don't mind. You tell yourself you're just more thoughtful, more proactive, better at maintaining relationships. But over time, you start noticing the pattern. You start seeing that if you stopped reaching out, you'd probably never hear from him again. So you test it sometimes. You don't text him first. You wait to see if he'll miss you enough to message. You hold back to see if he notices your absence. And sometimes he does reach out, and you feel this rush of relief. See, he was thinking about you. He does care. But most of the time, the silence stretches out. Days pass, and you realize he's fine without you. He doesn't need you the way you need him. That's when you feel the weight most. When you realize the relationship exists because you're holding it up. You're the foundation, the structure, the force that keeps it going. And if you stopped, the whole thing would collapse. Not because you're both letting go, but because you're the only one holding on in the first place. Studies on relationship dynamics show that when one person is consistently putting in more effort, the other person often becomes complacent. They stop trying because they don't have to. They know you'll do the work for both of you. They know you'll always be there. So why should they make an effort? And you hate that you've become so available, so predictable, so reliable. You hate that he can take you for granted because you've shown him he can. You've trained him to expect your effort without reciprocating. And now you're stuck in this dynamic where you give everything and he gives just enough to keep you around. The weight gets heavier when you realize you're changing yourself to fit what you think he wants. You laugh at things that aren't funny. You pretend to like things you don't care about. You hide parts of yourself that you think might be too much, too intense, too emotional, too needy. You become a smaller version of yourself, a carefully edited version designed to be more likable, more acceptable, less complicated. You do this thinking it'll make him want you more, but all it does is make you lose yourself more. One of the most painful parts about carrying this weight alone is that you can't even talk about it. Not really. Because what are you going to say? I'm in love with someone who doesn't love me back and I can't let go. People don't get it unless they've been there. They'll tell you to move on like it's simple, like feelings have an off switch, like you can just decide to stop loving someone and it happens. So you keep it inside. You carry the weight privately. You smile and act normal and pretend everything's fine while inside you're slowly being crushed under the pressure of loving someone who doesn't love you the same way. The mental exhaustion is real. You spend so much time in your head thinking about him, wondering about him, analyzing conversations, planning what to say next. You're rehearsing scenarios that'll probably never happen. Your brain never gets a break because he's always there, taking up space in your thoughts. Psychologists note that this constant mental preoccupation is similar to obsessive thinking. Your brain gets stuck in a loop, returning to the same person over and over, even when you try to think about something else. It's like having a song stuck in your head, except the song is him, and it never stops playing. And the thing about carrying this weight, it changes the way you see love. It makes you believe that love should be hard, that it should require suffering, that if you're not fighting for it, it's not real. You start to think that the pain proves how much you care, that the harder it is, the more it means. But that's not true. Real love, mutual love, it shouldn't feel like you're drowning. And it shouldn't exhaust you. It shouldn't make you question your worth every single day. Love that's right for you should feel like relief, not more weight to carry. You're so tired. Tired of hoping. Tired of trying. Tired of being disappointed. Tired of analyzing. Tired of wondering. Tired of feeling like you're not enough. Just tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. But you still can't put it down. The weight, the love, the hope. Because putting it down means walking away. And walking away means losing the one thing you've been holding on to. Even if that thing is killing you slowly, at least it's something. At least it's him. Research shows that people stay in unrequited love situations not because they enjoy the pain, but because the alternative, accepting that it's never going to happen, feels worse. The pain you know feels safer than the pain of letting go. So you keep carrying the weight even though it's breaking you. The loneliness of one-sided love is its own special kind of hell. You're technically connected to this person, but you've never felt more alone. Because the connection isn't real. Not really. It's one-sided. You're the only one who feels it. You're alone in a relationship that only exists in your heart. And that makes the weight so much heavier. Because you can't share it. You can't talk to him about how you feel because that might push him away. You can't lean on him for support because he's the source of your pain. You're completely isolated in this experience, carrying something too heavy for one person to carry with no help coming. Sometimes you wonder if it would be easier if he was just cruel, and if he was obviously not interested, if he treated you badly. At least then you'd have a clear reason to leave. But he's not cruel. He's nice. He's kind. He's friendly. He probably genuinely likes you as a friend. And that almost makes it worse because you can't hate him. You can't get angry. You can't justify walking away when he hasn't actually done anything wrong. He's just not in love with you. And you can't hate someone for that. You can't be mad at them for not feeling what they don't feel, so you blame yourself instead. And that becomes part of the weight, too. The self-blame. The feeling that if you were different, better, more, he'd love you back. The weight of one-sided love includes all of this. The effort, the exhaustion, the hope, the disappointment, the changing yourself, the mental preoccupation, the loneliness, the self-blame. It all piles up, one thing on top of another, until you're buried under it. And still, you carry it. Because letting go feels impossible. Because you're not ready. Because you still believe maybe one day the weight will become lighter. Maybe one day he'll help you carry it. Maybe one day this one-sided love will become something mutual, and all the pain will have been worth it. But days turn into weeks, turn into months, and the weight never gets lighter. If anything, it gets heavier. Because the longer you carry it alone, the more damage it does. To your self-esteem, to your mental health, to your belief that you're worthy of being loved back. The weight crushes you slowly until you don't recognize yourself anymore. When your body knows before your mind, your body figures it out before your brain does. That's what nobody tells you about unrequited love. Your mind can stay in denial for months, years even. But your body, it knows something's wrong long before you're ready to admit it. It starts small. You notice you're not sleeping as well. You wake up in the middle of the night with this anxious feeling in your chest, even though you can't pinpoint why. Or you have trouble falling asleep because your mind won't stop racing, replaying conversations, imagining scenarios, trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. Research on the physical effects of unrequited love shows that your brain processes rejection the same way it processes physical pain. The same areas light up on brain scans. Your body literally experiences heartbreak as an injury. That's not just a metaphor. When people say their heart hurts, there's actual physiological truth to that. You start feeling anxiety in your body even when you're not consciously thinking about him. Your stomach ties itself in knots. Your chest feels tight. You have this constant low-level stress humming through your system, keeping you on edge, making you feel like something's wrong even when nothing specific is happening. The physical symptoms of anxiety become familiar. Heart palpitations when you see a text from him. Shortness of breath when you're about to see him in person. Hands shaking when you're trying to send a message and overthinking every word. Your body is in a constant state of fight or flight, reacting to the threat of rejection even when rejection hasn't explicitly happened yet. And studies show that people experiencing one-sided love often develop symptoms similar to generalized anxiety disorder. The constant uncertainty, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the hypervigilance about every interaction, it all keeps your nervous system activated. Your body can't relax because it's always waiting for the next disappointment. You lose your appetite or you eat too much. Food stops being about nourishment and becomes about coping. Either you can't eat because your stomach's too anxious, or you're eating constantly to fill the emptiness he's leaving. Your relationship with food changes because your emotional state is so unstable. The exhaustion is overwhelming. Not just mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion. You're tired all the time. Could sleep for 12 hours and still wake up tired. And your body is working overtime, processing all these emotions, all this stress, all this hope and disappointment on repeat. It's draining you. Headaches become normal. tension headaches from holding stress in your shoulders and neck. You don't even notice how tense you are until someone points it out, or you look in a mirror and see how tight your face is, how raised your shoulders are, how much you're physically bracing against the pain you're feeling emotionally. Research indicates that prolonged stress from unrequited love can weaken your immune system. You start getting sick more often, catching every cold that goes around, taking longer to recover from illnesses. Your body's defenses are compromised because all your energy is going toward managing the emotional turmoil instead of keeping you healthy. You notice changes in your skin. You're breaking out more than usual, looking tired even when you've slept. Your physical appearance reflects the internal chaos. And then you stress about that too, because you want to look good for him, but the stress of wanting to look good is making you look worse, which makes you stress more. It's a vicious cycle. Your hands are always slightly clammy when you're around him. Your heart rate elevates. You're hyper-aware of your body in a way that's uncomfortable, wondering if he notices how nervous you are, if he can see how much he affects you, if your feelings are written all over your face even though you're trying to act casual. The crying is physical too. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere. You'll be fine, functioning normally, and then something small happens, something that shouldn't matter. A song or a memory or seeing him smile at someone else, and suddenly you're crying, not delicate tears. The kind of crying that makes your whole body shake, that leaves you exhausted and hollow afterward. Studies on the physical manifestations of emotional pain show that crying is actually a stress response, releasing hormones and helping regulate your nervous system. But when you're crying about him over and over, it stops feeling cathartic and starts feeling like your body is just perpetually trying to process something too big to process. You develop physical habits tied to him. Checking your phone becomes an involuntary action. Your hand reaches for it without thinking, dozens of times a day, hoping for a notification from him. That constant checking releases tiny hits of dopamine when there is a message, and cortisol when there isn't. Your body becomes addicted to the checking, even though it causes more stress than relief. When you finally do see him, your body floods with chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, adrenaline, all creating this intense emotional and physical high. You feel alive, present, more like yourself than you have in days. That high is real. That's your body rewarding you for being near someone you're attached to, even when that attachment isn't healthy. But the crash afterward is just as real. When you leave him, when the interaction ends, your body goes through withdrawal. The chemicals drop. You feel empty, anxious, already missing him before you've even fully said goodbye. Your body wants that high again. It's chasing the feeling. And that's part of why it's so hard to stay away. Sleep disturbances get worse over time. So you're either sleeping too much, using sleep to escape, or you can't sleep at all because your brain won't shut off. Either way, you're not getting restful sleep. You wake up multiple times a night, have dreams about him, stress dreams where you're trying to reach him and can't. Wake up feeling like you didn't rest at all. Research shows that poor sleep quality contributes to depression, and depression makes the pain of unrequited love worse, which disrupts sleep more, which increases depression. It's another vicious cycle your body gets trapped in, each symptom making the others worse. Your startle response is heightened. You jump at sudden noises. You're on edge all the time. Your nervous system is so overstimulated by the constant stress that it can't distinguish between real threats and the emotional threat of rejection. Everything feels dangerous. Your body is preparing to protect you from getting hurt, but there's no physical danger to protect against. The danger is emotional. You notice your chest physically hurts sometimes, like there's a weight on it, like someone's squeezing your heart. That's not imagination. That's your body responding to emotional distress with physical sensation. Your heart rate changes. Your blood pressure can be affected. The phrase broken heart exists for a reason. Your cardiovascular system responds to emotional pain. The brain fog is real too. You can't concentrate, can't focus on work or school or anything that requires mental energy because your brain is using all its resources to process feelings about him. Simple tasks take longer. You make mistakes. You forget things. And your cognitive function is compromised by the emotional load you're carrying. Psychologists have found that people experiencing prolonged emotional distress perform worse on cognitive tasks. Your brain literally works less efficiently when it's overwhelmed by emotion. And loving someone who doesn't love you back is overwhelming every single day. You develop physical tension that won't release. Your jaw clenches. Your fists ball up without you realizing. Your whole body is holding on to the stress, storing it in your muscles, in your tissues, creating chronic tension that leads to chronic pain. And you don't even connect it to him at first. You just think you're sore, stressed, tired. You don't realize your body is literally holding on to the pain of loving him. Studies on somatic symptoms show that emotional pain we don't process, and that we suppress or deny, often manifests as physical symptoms. Your body keeps score even when your mind refuses to acknowledge what's happening. And if you're not ready to face the emotional truth, your body will force you to feel something through physical symptoms. You might develop nervous habits you didn't have before. Biting your nails, picking at your skin, pulling at your hair. These are ways your body tries to release the tension it's holding. Ways to have control over something when you feel completely out of control in the situation with him. Your breath changes. You hold your breath without realizing it. Take shallow breaths instead of deep ones. Your body is in survival mode, and that affects everything, including the most basic function of breathing. And you have to consciously remind yourself to take deep breaths, because your automatic breathing has become restricted by stress. The physical weight of anxiety sits on your chest. You know that feeling, right? Where it's hard to take a full breath because there's this pressure. That's your body manifesting the emotional weight into something tangible. It's trying to show you that something's wrong, that you can't keep doing this, that the situation is hurting you even if your mind isn't ready to admit it. When you finally do walk away, when you finally end it, your body goes through withdrawal for real. You feel physically sick, nauseous, shaky, can't eat, can't sleep. Your body was dependent on those chemical highs it got from being near him, and now it has to readjust to functioning without them. It's like quitting an addiction because, in a way, that's exactly what it is. Your body knows the truth before you do. It tries to tell you through anxiety, through exhaustion, through physical pain, through all these symptoms that something isn't right. But you ignore it as long as you can. You push through. You tell yourself you're fine. You treat the symptoms instead of addressing the cause, until you can't ignore it anymore, until your body forces you to pay attention. until the physical toll becomes so great that you have no choice but to acknowledge that loving him is making you sick, that this isn't sustainable, that you can't keep doing this to yourself without serious consequences. Your body knows. It always knew. It was trying to protect you the whole time. But you were too busy loving him to listen to what your own body was trying to tell you. Oh, and now you're dealing with the physical aftermath of emotional devastation. Now you understand that heartbreak isn't just emotional. It's physical. It's real. And it hurts in ways that leave scars you can't see, but you can definitely feel. The fantasy versus reality, you're not actually in love with him. Not really. You're in love with the version of him you created in your head. The version that says all the right things. The version that wants you back. The version that sees everything you are and falls in love with it. That version doesn't exist. That's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Real him is different from fantasy him. Real him forgets to text back. Real him makes plans with other people and doesn't think to include you. Real him is emotionally unavailable in ways you keep trying to excuse. Real him probably has flaws you're actively ignoring, because acknowledging them would shatter the perfect image you've built. Research on unrequited love shows that idealization is one of the most common patterns. You focus only on his positive qualities and filter out anything that doesn't fit the narrative you want to believe. Your brain literally selects information that confirms what you want to be true and discards information that contradicts it. It's called confirmation bias, and it's keeping you stuck in a fantasy. You've built him up into this perfect person, taken small kindnesses and inflated them into proof of deeper feelings, interpreted neutral actions as interest, created meaning where there might not be any. And now you're in love with a person who largely exists in your imagination. See, while the real version of him is just living his life, probably unaware of the pedestal you've put him on. Think about what you actually know about him versus what you've assumed or imagined. Do you know his deepest fears, his real flaws, his actual dreams and goals? Or do you know a surface version filled in with your own projections of what you want him to be? When you imagine your future together, you're imagining fantasy him, the version who finally realizes you're perfect for each other, who confesses he's been feeling the same way all along, who becomes the partner you've been dreaming about. But that's a story. That's not based on anything he's actually said or done. That's based on what you wish would happen. Psychology research on limerence, that obsessive form of romantic attraction, shows that people often fall in love with their own projections. They meet someone, feel chemistry or connection, and then their brain creates an idealized version of that person based on limited information. They fall for the potential, not the reality. You've given him qualities he might not have, depth he might not possess, feelings he definitely doesn't have. And you've done all of this unconsciously because your brain wants the fantasy to be real. Your heart wants him to be the person you need him to be. So you make him into that person, at least in your mind. The real him probably wouldn't live up to the fantasy even if he did love you back. Because nobody can live up to an idealized version. Real people are complicated, flawed, sometimes disappointing. But you don't want to see that about him because seeing his real self, with flaws and all, might make it easier to let go. And you're not ready to let go. Studies show that people in unrequited love situations often resist seeing the other person clearly because clarity would force them to act. If you saw him as he really is, complex and imperfect, and not interested in you romantically, you'd have to accept that it's not going to happen. But as long as you can maintain the fantasy, you can maintain the hope. You imagine conversations that'll never happen, scenarios where he finally admits his feelings, moments where everything clicks into place and you end up together. You play these scenarios over and over in your head like a movie, and they feel so real that you start to believe they could actually happen. But they won't happen. Those conversations will stay imaginary. Those scenarios won't manifest. And the more time you spend in the fantasy, the further you drift from reality. The harder it becomes to see things as they are instead of how you want them to be. The fantasy protects you from pain in the short term. If you can believe he might love you back eventually, you don't have to feel the full weight of rejection right now. If you can imagine a future together, you don't have to grieve the relationship you'll never have. The fantasy is a buffer between you and the truth. And your brain maintains that fantasy as a coping mechanism. Psychologists note that idealization in unrequited love serves a self-protective function. It's less painful to believe you're in love with someone perfect who just hasn't realized they love you yet, than to accept you've developed strong feelings for someone who's never going to reciprocate and probably isn't even the person you think they are. The version of him in your fantasy knows you deeply, understands you, gets all your references, laughs at your jokes, values your opinions, makes you feel seen and heard and special. But real him probably doesn't know you that well, because knowing someone requires time and attention and investment that he hasn't made. You're in a relationship with fantasy him. That's where most of your emotional energy goes. You interact with the real him, but you're really responding to the version in your head. And that disconnect, it's part of why this hurts so much. Because the relationship you want feels so real to you, even though it only exists in your imagination. Research on parasocial relationships, those one-sided connections people form with celebrities or public figures, shows similar patterns. People feel deeply connected to someone who doesn't know them at all. They develop real emotions about an imaginary relationship. That's essentially what you're doing with him, except he's actually in your life, which makes the fantasy feel more justified. You've created a narrative around him. A story where you're meant to be together, where all of this, the waiting and hoping and hurting, it all leads to a happy ending, where your patience is rewarded, where your loyalty pays off, where the fantasy becomes reality. That narrative keeps you going, keeps you believing, keeps you stuck. But what if there's no narrative? What if there's no story? What if it's just a situation where you have feelings and he doesn't, and that's all it is? No deeper meaning, no eventual payoff, no grand romantic conclusion where everything makes sense. Just you, loving someone who doesn't love you back, the end. That's harder to accept, because we want our pain to mean something. We want to believe suffering leads somewhere good. That the universe rewards people who wait and hope and try hard enough. But unrequited love doesn't usually have a satisfying resolution. More often, it just ends with you finally accepting reality and walking away from the fantasy you built. Studies on letting go of unrequited love emphasize the importance of seeing the person clearly, not through the lens of hope or potential, but as they actually are, with their real flaws, their real limitations, their real lack of interest. That clarity is often what finally breaks the spell of idealization. You've been in love with potential, with possibility, with the idea of what you two could be if only he felt the same way. But potential isn't real. Possibility isn't real. And relationships don't exist in the realm of could be. They exist in what is. And what is that he doesn't want you the way you want him. The fantasy version of him would never hurt you, would never leave you on red, would never make you feel unimportant, would never choose other people over you, would never make you question your worth. But real him does all of those things, probably without even realizing the impact, because he's not in love with you. He's just a regular person living his life, and you happen to be caught up in feelings he doesn't share. When you finally start to see the difference between fantasy and reality, it's devastating. And because it means letting go of so much. Not just him, but the version of yourself you imagined being with him. The future you'd planned. The relationship you'd built entirely in your mind. All of it dissolves when reality comes into focus. But seeing reality is also the beginning of freedom, because you can't move on from a fantasy. You can only move on from what's real. And once you start seeing him clearly, seeing the situation clearly, seeing yourself and what you've been doing to yourself by maintaining the fantasy, that's when change becomes possible. The fantasy kept you safe, but also kept you stuck. Reality is harder to face, but it's the only place where healing can begin. And maybe the person you're really in love with isn't him at all. Maybe you're in love with the feeling of hope, the possibility of being chosen, the idea that someday someone will see you the way you see them, and you attached all of that to him because he was there, because there was chemistry, because your heart needed somewhere to put all that longing. But he can't fulfill a fantasy. Nobody can. Real love, mutual love, it's not perfect and idealized. It's messy and complicated and sometimes disappointing, and also wonderful in ways fantasy never can be. Because it's real. It's shared. It's built on truth instead of imagination. You deserve real love with a real person who loves the real you. Not a fantasy relationship with an idealized version of someone who doesn't even know how you truly feel. And you can't get to that real love until you let go of the fantasy, until you see him for who he actually is, and see yourself for who you're becoming by staying attached to something that isn't real, watching them live without you. He has a whole life that doesn't include you. That's one of the hardest things to watch. To see him exist fully, happily, completely without you being part of it. To realize you could disappear tomorrow and his life would go on unchanged. That the space you occupy in his world is so small, he might not even notice if you stopped filling it. You see him making plans with other people, going places without inviting you, doing things you'd love to be part of but you're not. And every time, it's a reminder that you're optional, peripheral, not essential to his happiness or his life. Social media makes it worse, so much worse. You can't help but look. You know you shouldn't, but you do anyway. You check his stories, his posts, his tags. You see where he is, who he's with, what he's doing, and most of it doesn't involve you. Research shows that social media surveillance in unrequited love situations significantly increases emotional distress. You're essentially giving yourself evidence over and over that you don't matter to him the way he matters to you, that he's living his best life while you're stuck thinking about him constantly. You see photos of him with other people, and you analyze everything. Who's that girl? How does he know them? Why does he look so happy? Is that the smile he gives when he really likes someone? You never see that smile directed at you, so what does that mean? You torture yourself looking at his interactions with others, the way he comments on their posts, the jokes he makes, the affection he shows. And you compare it to how he interacts with you, and yours always falls short. His responses to you are shorter, less engaged, less interested, and you see that difference clearly when you're scrolling through his social media. Studies on social media and mental health show that comparison is one of the primary drivers of depression and anxiety among young adults. And when you're in love with someone who doesn't love you back, you're comparing constantly, comparing yourself to everyone he chooses over you, comparing what he gives them to what he gives you. The worst is watching him be happy without you, seeing him laugh and enjoy life and thrive while you're struggling. It's not that you want him to be unhappy. You just want to be part of his happiness. You want to be the reason for that smile, but you're not. You're not even in the picture. He posts about places he's been and you think, I would have loved to go there with him. He posts about experiences he's having, and you think, why didn't he ask me? He posts about people he's close to, and you think, why am I never one of those people? And the silence in your notifications is deafening. He posts regularly but rarely interacts with your content. He views your stories but doesn't respond. He likes a post here and there, but not consistently. It's like you're screaming into a void, hoping he'll notice you, and he's just casually scrolling past. Research on attachment and social media shows that people with anxious attachment styles are more likely to use social media to monitor romantic interests, which increases their anxiety and insecurity. The more you check, the worse you feel. But you can't stop checking because not knowing feels even worse than knowing you don't matter as much as you'd like to. You see him living his life in real time, and none of it includes you. That's the painful reality social media forces you to face. Before, you could imagine he was thinking about you when you weren't together. Now you can see exactly what he's doing, and it's never thinking about you. The comparison game becomes unbearable. You start noticing who he follows, who follows him, whose posts he likes, whose comments he replies to, and you're building a hierarchy in your mind of who matters to him, where you rank, and you never rank as high as you want to. You see him interact with someone and you think, that should be me. He's giving that person attention that should be mine. He's sharing experiences with them that I want to share. He's choosing them over me again and again, and I have to watch it happen in real time. Studies show that this kind of passive surveillance creates a phenomenon called ambiguous loss. You haven't lost him because you never had him, but you're grieving the loss of potential. And watching him live without you keeps that grief fresh. Every post is a reminder of what you don't have, what you'll never have. Sometimes you see him with someone and you just know, you can feel it. The way he looks at them is different. The way he acts around them is different. And your heart sinks because you realize he's capable of what you want. He just doesn't feel it for you. He can be romantic, attentive, interested, just not with you. That's a special kind of pain. Watching someone be exactly what you need them to be, except they're being that for someone else. Proof that the problem isn't them. It's not that they can't love someone. They just don't love you. You keep looking, though. You can't help it. Even though every time you check his social media, you feel worse, you do it anyway. Because not knowing feels scary. And seeing evidence that he's fine without you at least gives you information, even if that information breaks your heart a little more each time. Research on compulsive social media, checking in relation to unrequited feelings, shows it's a form of self-harm. You're deliberately exposing yourself to content that causes you pain. But the anxiety of not checking feels worse than the pain of checking, so you're trapped in this cycle of hurting yourself over and over. And you see him tag locations, and you know his routine, where he goes, when he goes, who he's usually with. You have information about his life that you shouldn't have, that he hasn't explicitly shared with you. And somehow that makes you feel more connected to him, even though you're actually not connected at all. You're watching his life through a screen, creating parasocial intimacy that isn't real. He's not living his life for your viewing pleasure. He's just living, and you happen to have access to watch. But that access doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he cares that you're watching. He probably doesn't even think about whether you'll see his posts. You're not on his mind when he's posting them. The indifference hurts more than active rejection. If he blocked you, at least that would be a clear message. But he doesn't care enough to block you. You're just there, in his follower list, occasionally viewing his content, rarely interacting, essentially invisible. Studies on social exclusion show that feeling left out activates the same pain centers in the brain as physical pain. And watching him include everyone but you, seeing your absence in his life so clearly documented online, that's a form of exclusion that stabs repeatedly. You see him make time for things that interest him, hobbies, events, activities, and you think, he has time for all of that, but not for me. He has energy for those things, but not for responding to my message. His life is full, just not with you in it. The thing about watching someone live without you is it forces you to confront the truth you've been avoiding, that you're not important to him, that your presence or absence doesn't significantly impact his daily life, that he's complete without you, that he doesn't need you the way you need him, and you watch all of this from the outside, looking in at a life you wish you were part of, seeing him experience things you'd love to experience with him, watching him be happy with people who aren't you, creating memories that don't include you, building a life where you're barely a footnote. Research shows that the pain of exclusion and rejection doesn't decrease with repeated exposure. You don't get used to it. Every time you see evidence that you don't matter to him, it hurts just as much as the first time. Maybe more, because it's confirmation of what you already feared but kept hoping wasn't true. You try to stop checking. You tell yourself today's the day you won't look at his profile. You'll unfollow, mute, block, whatever it takes to stop knowing what he's doing, but then something weak and hopeful in you thinks maybe he posted something about you. Maybe this time you'll see evidence that you matter. So you look, and it's never what you hoped. It's just more proof that his world keeps spinning without you. The saddest part is knowing that he's probably not doing any of this to hurt you. He's not posting about his life to make you jealous or to prove a point. He's just existing. And you're the one interpreting everything through the lens of unrequited love. You're the one making it about you when it has nothing to do with you at all. That's maybe the most painful realization. That even your pain about him isn't about him, or it's about you and your feelings and your unmet needs, and he's just living his life, completely unaware of the effect it has on you, completely unchanged by your absence, completely fine without you, And you have to decide at some point if you're going to keep watching. Keep collecting evidence of your own insignificance. Keep hurting yourself by staying informed about a life that doesn't include you. Or, if you're going to look away, close the app, block the account. Choose not to know what he's doing so you can start focusing on your own life instead of the one you're not part of. The self-blame spiral. When he doesn't love you back, you don't blame him. You blame yourself. That's what happens. You take this thing that has nothing to do with your worth, and you make it about every flaw you think you have. Every insecurity you've ever felt. Every reason you've told yourself you're not enough. Your brain goes into this spiral. What's wrong with me? Why am I not lovable? What do other people have that I don't? Why am I always the one who doesn't get chosen? And once you start down that path, it's hard to stop. Every question leads to another. Every insecurity confirms the next. Until you've convinced yourself that there's something fundamentally broken about you that makes you undeserving of love. Research on rejection and self-esteem shows that romantic rejection can significantly impact how you view yourself. When someone doesn't love you back, your brain tries to make sense of it. And the easiest explanation, the one that feels most true in the moment, is that something's wrong with you. You're the common factor in all your rejections. So it must be you, right? You start picking yourself apart. Your appearance, your personality, your intelligence, your sense of humor, your interests. Everything that makes you who you are becomes a potential reason why he doesn't want you. Maybe you're too quiet. Maybe you're too loud. Maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you're not emotional enough. Maybe you're too much or not enough or somehow both at the same time. You compare yourself to every person in his life. What do they have that you don't? You assume they must be better, prettier, funnier, more interesting. They must have some quality that makes them worth choosing while you're somehow lacking. And you analyze them looking for the thing you're missing, the thing you could change about yourself to make him want you. And studies show that women especially tend to internalize rejection, viewing it as evidence of personal inadequacy rather than simple incompatibility. Society teaches us that if we're good enough, thin enough, pretty enough, interesting enough, we'll be loved. So when we're not loved, we assume we failed at being enough. You start modifying yourself, trying to be whoever you think he wants. You laugh differently, dress differently, talk about different things, hide parts of yourself that feel too much. You become this carefully curated version designed to be more palatable, more acceptable, more lovable. And in the process, you lose yourself completely. The irony is that changing yourself rarely makes someone love you. Love isn't something you earn through self-improvement or self-erasure. But when you're desperate to be chosen, you'll try anything. You'll become anyone. You'll sacrifice your authenticity on the altar of maybe being loved. You replay every interaction looking for your mistakes. What did you say wrong? What could you have done differently? If you'd been funnier, quieter, more interesting, would the outcome have changed? You turn every memory into evidence of your failure, finding reasons to blame yourself for his lack of interest. Psychologists note this is a form of cognitive distortion called personalization, where you take responsibility for things that aren't actually your fault. His feelings, or lack thereof, aren't your responsibility. They're not something you caused or can fix, but telling yourself it's your fault gives you a sense of control, even if that control is an illusion. the worst part of the self-blame spiral is how it affects your sense of worth outside of him. You start to believe you're unlovable, period. Not just unlovable to him, but unlovable in general. You look at your past relationships and see a pattern of not being chosen, and you use that as evidence that the problem is you. But patterns don't prove unworthiness. Sometimes you've just been giving your heart to people who weren't right for you. Sometimes you've been choosing people who can't love you back for reasons that have nothing to do with your value. Sometimes you're looking for love in places it was never going to be found. Research on attachment theory shows that people with anxious attachment often believe they have to earn love through perfection and caretaking. They learned early that love is conditional, that they have to be good enough to deserve it. So when someone doesn't love them, they assume they weren't good enough. They blame themselves instead of questioning whether that person was capable of giving the kind of love they needed. You start believing really toxic things about yourself. That you're too damaged to love. That your past makes you unworthy. That your body isn't right. That your personality is wrong. That there's something broken inside you that everyone can see except you don't see it, but you feel it. And that invisible broken thing is why nobody stays. Why nobody chooses you. Why you're always alone. But none of that is true. The things you think are flaws might be the things someone else falls in love with. The qualities you're trying to hide might be exactly what makes you uniquely beautiful. Your worth isn't determined by whether one person loves you back. Your value doesn't increase or decrease based on someone else's feelings. Studies show that rejection can lead to temporary but significant drops in self-esteem, especially when that rejection comes from someone you idealize. When you put someone on a pedestal and they don't choose you, it feels like the ultimate judgment of your worth. If this person you think is so special doesn't want you, what does that say about you? It says nothing about you. That's what it says. His lack of interest is information about him, not about you. Maybe he's emotionally unavailable. Maybe he's afraid of intimacy. Maybe he's got his own issues that have nothing to do with you. Maybe you're perfect and he still doesn't want you, because love isn't about perfection. It's about fit, about timing. It's about two people meeting when they're both ready and wanting the same things. You're not unlovable because he doesn't love you. You're not broken because one person or several people didn't choose you. You're not too much or not enough. You're just you, and the right person will love that you. The wrong people won't, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you need to change. It means they weren't your people. But when you're in the spiral, you can't see that. You're convinced that if you could just fix yourself, become better, be different, then he'd love you. Then everyone would love you. Then you wouldn't be alone. So you keep trying to change, keep blaming yourself, keep taking responsibility for things that were never yours to fix. The self-blame becomes a habit, an automatic response to rejection. Someone doesn't love you back, and immediately your brain jumps to what's wrong with me. Not what's wrong with them or what's wrong with this situation. Always, what's wrong with me? And that habit destroys your self-esteem bit by bit. Research on self-compassion shows that people who blame themselves for rejection have a harder time moving on and are more likely to develop depression and anxiety. When you make everything your fault, you rob yourself of the ability to see situations clearly. You can't learn from experiences if you're busy tearing yourself down about them. You need to stop the spiral. That's easier said than done, but it's necessary. You need to start catching those thoughts when they come. When your brain says there's something wrong with you, you need to challenge that. Is there actually something wrong? Or are you just different from what this one person wanted? Different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. When you start comparing yourself to others, stop. Comparison kills everything. You will always find someone who seems better in some way if you're looking for reasons to feel inferior. But you're not them, and they're not you. And someone else's qualities don't diminish yours. Studies show that practicing self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend, can significantly reduce the negative mental health effects of rejection. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask what do I need right now? What would make me feel better? How can I be gentle with myself while I heal? The truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. You fell in love with someone who didn't love you back. That's not a character flaw. That's not proof of unworthiness. That's just a painful thing that happens to most people at some point. It doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you loved someone who wasn't right for you. And that's okay. That's human. That's life. You are enough exactly as you are. Not because you're perfect, nobody is, but because your worth isn't conditional. It doesn't depend on who loves you or who doesn't. It doesn't increase when someone chooses you and decrease when they don't. You are inherently valuable just by existing, and no amount of rejection changes that truth. But you have to believe that. You have to fight the spiral that tells you otherwise. You have to remind yourself over and over that his inability to love you is about him, not about you. That you are lovable and worthy, and deserving of someone who sees that without you having to prove it. Someone who loves you as you are, not as you're trying to be to win their affection. Stop blaming yourself for his feelings. Stop taking responsibility for his choices. Stop making yourself smaller and quieter and less to try to fit into his life. You don't need to change to be lovable. You need to find someone who loves the real you, not the diminished version you become when you're trying to earn someone's love. The moments that break you. It's not the big things that break you. It's the small moments. The ones that shouldn't hurt, but they do. The ones that catch you off guard and crack something inside your chest that was barely holding together anyway. Like when he mentions someone else. Casual, like it's nothing. And talks about them the way you wish he'd talk about you. You can hear the affection in his voice. The interest. The something that's missing when he talks to you. And you have to sit there and listen and pretend it doesn't feel like swallowing glass. Pretend you're happy for him even though every word is confirming what you already knew but didn't want to believe. He can feel those things, just not for you. Research on jealousy in unrequited relationships shows that watching the person you love be interested in someone else activates intense emotional pain, including feelings of inadequacy and grief. Your brain processes this as a loss, even though you never actually had what you're losing. Or it's the moment he calls you his friend, says it out loud. You're such a good friend. And you smile and say, thanks. And inside you're dying because you don't want to be his friend. You've never wanted to be his friend. But that's all you are to him, and hearing him say it makes it real in a way it wasn't before. Puts you in a box you can't get out of. The friend zone isn't just a concept. It's a specific moment where you realize that's all you'll ever be. You're sitting with him, and something reminds you that this isn't what you want. This friendship, this closeness that isn't close enough. This constant proximity to someone you can't actually have. And you have to decide if being near him as just a friend is better than not having him in your life at all. And you always choose being near him, even though it's killing you slowly. Studies on ambiguous relationships show that the lack of clear definition causes more anxiety and emotional distress than being in a clearly defined relationship or being fully rejected. The not knowing, the maybe, the constant hope mixed with constant disappointment. It's emotionally exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. There's the moment when you're texting him and he just stops responding. Mid-conversation. You see he read it. You know he's online. You watch him post on social media. But he doesn't reply to you. And you sit there staring at your phone wondering what you said wrong. If you were too much, too needy, too boring, too something. And the silence feels like rejection, even though maybe he just got busy or distracted. But you can't help reading into it. And it's watching him light up for other people. You're there, right there. And someone else walks up and his whole demeanor changes. He becomes more animated, more engaged, more present. And you realize he's never lit up like that for you. You get the regular version of him, the casual version, but they get the version that's actually excited to see them. And that difference, seeing it right in front of you, it breaks something. Psychologists note that social comparison in the presence of rejection significantly increases feelings of worthlessness. When you can directly compare how he treats you versus how he treats others, the disparity becomes undeniable. You can't make excuses anymore. You can't tell yourself you're imagining things. The difference is real, and you have to watch it happen. There's the moment he talks about his ideal person, describes what he's looking for in a relationship, and you're sitting there realizing you don't fit that description. You're not what he wants. And even if you tried to change yourself to become that person, you'd just be playing a role. You'd be the wrong person trying to be right for him instead of finding someone who thinks you're already right exactly as you are. It's when he forgets something important you told him, something you thought he'd remember because it mattered to you. But it meant nothing to him, so it slipped his mind. Meanwhile, you remember every single thing he's ever said because you hold on to his words like they're precious. The imbalance is obvious. You care more. You remember more. You notice more. And he just exists, barely aware of the impact he has on you. Research on memory and emotion shows that we remember things tied to strong emotions much better than neutral information. You remember everything about him because he makes you feel intensely. He doesn't remember much about you because you don't affect him the same way. That's not cruelty. That's just the reality of one-sided feelings. There's the moment he casually mentions plans for his future, and you're not in them. Not even as a possibility. Not even as a maybe. He talks about where he sees himself in 5 years, what he wants, who he wants to be with. And it's clear that whatever he's imagining, you're not part of that picture. You're not even on the edges of his vision for his life. Or it's hearing him complain about being single, talking about how he wants to meet someone, how he's ready for a relationship. And you're right there loving him, wanting him, ready to give him everything. And he's still looking past you for someone else. You're invisible to him romantically, even when you're sitting in front of him, even when you're available and interested in everything he says he wants. he still doesn't see you that way. Studies on rejection sensitivity show that repeated micro-rejections, these small moments where you feel dismissed or overlooked, can be more damaging to mental health than one big rejection, because they're constant. They add up. Death by 1,000 cuts instead of one clean break. It's the moment you realize you're trying harder than he is. You're the one initiating all the conversations, making all the plans, putting in all the effort. And if you stopped, everything would just stop. The relationship only exists because you're maintaining it. He's just showing up when it's convenient, but you're building the whole thing on your own. There's the time you dress up hoping he'll notice, and he doesn't. Or if he does notice, it's a casual comment with no real interest behind it. Meanwhile, someone else gives you a compliment and his reaction is neutral. Like he doesn't care if other people find you attractive. Like he feels nothing watching someone else flirt with you. Because why would he? You're just a friend. It's seeing him post something sad or vulnerable and knowing you'd be there for him instantly if he just asked. You'd drop everything to make him feel better. But he doesn't ask you. He never asks you. When he needs support or comfort or someone to talk to, you're not who he thinks of. You're not his person, even though he's yours. Research on emotional labor in relationships shows that imbalanced emotional investment leads to burnout and resentment. When you're constantly giving and getting nothing back, eventually you run empty. Even love can't sustain itself when it's completely one-directional. There's the moment during a group conversation when something funny happens and everyone's laughing, and you catch his eye. And for 1 second, you think maybe there's something there. Maybe you're sharing this moment. And then he looks away and keeps laughing with everyone else, and you realize you're reading into nothing again. You're desperate for connection, so you're finding it where it doesn't exist. It's when he asks for advice about someone else. Wants your opinion on how to pursue another person. And you have to sit there and help him. Give him tips. Encourage him. Play the supportive friend role while inside you're screaming because you're right here and he's asking you how to get someone else. The irony is brutal. The person who wants him most is giving him advice on how to want someone else. Or it's the moment after a really good conversation. You felt close, connected, like something shifted, and you think maybe this is it. Maybe he finally felt what you've been feeling. And then time passes and nothing changes. He goes right back to treating you the same way. What felt like a breakthrough to you was just a normal conversation to him. You made it mean something because you wanted it to mean something. But it didn't. And studies show that people in unrequited love situations often misinterpret neutral or friendly behavior as romantic interest because they're hypervigilant for any sign of reciprocation. Your brain is looking so hard for evidence that he might love you back that it finds meaning in meaningless things. And every time you realize you were wrong, it breaks you a little more. These moments accumulate, pile up. Each one is a crack in whatever's left of your hope, and you think you're strong enough to handle them. One more disappointment won't kill you. One more rejection you can survive. But there's always one more, and one more after that, until you're not sure how much more you can take before you finally break completely. The worst part is, you can't predict which moment will be the final one. Which small hurt will be the one that makes you realize you can't do this anymore. Could be any of them. Could be a moment that seems insignificant to everyone else. But to you, After everything, it's the one that finally makes you understand that this has to stop, that hoping is hurting you more than accepting reality would, that you've been breaking yourself on him for too long and you can't keep doing it. The addiction of almost you're addicted to almost. That's what this is. You're hooked on the possibility, the potential, the maybe. And like any addiction, you know it's bad for you, but you can't stop, can't walk away, can't imagine life without this thing that's destroying you slowly. The thing about unrequited love is it's designed to be addictive. You get just enough to keep you hoping, just enough attention to make you think maybe there's something here, just enough of his time to convince yourself you matter, just enough kindness to believe he might care, but never enough to actually satisfy you, never enough to fill the need, just enough to keep you coming back for more. Psychologists have a term for this: intermittent reinforcement. It's one of the most powerful ways to create addictive behavior. When rewards come unpredictably, when sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't, your brain becomes obsessed with figuring out the pattern, trying to control the outcome, believing that if you just do the right thing, say the right thing, be the right way, you'll get the reward more consistently. Research shows that intermittent reinforcement creates stronger behavioral patterns than consistent reinforcement, meaning the unpredictability of his attention is actually more addictive than if he was consistently attentive or consistently absent. The uncertainty is what keeps you hooked, never knowing when you'll get another hit of his interest, always hoping this time will be different. This time he'll finally love you back. It's like gambling. You put your heart into this slot machine over and over. Most of the time you lose. Most of the time you get nothing back. But every once in a while you get something. A text that makes you feel special. A moment of connection. A hint that maybe he feels something too. And that one win erases all the losses in your mind. Makes you believe if you just keep trying, eventually you'll hit the jackpot. But you won't. The game is rigged. Not because he's intentionally playing games, but because the setup is fundamentally imbalanced. You're investing everything, hoping for a return that's never going to come. And the occasional small wins, they're not progress toward the big win you want. They're just enough to keep you playing. Studies on addiction show that the anticipation of reward activates the same brain areas as actually receiving the reward. So just hoping he'll text you, just imagining he might notice you, just fantasizing about him finally loving you back, that gives you a dopamine hit. Your brain is literally rewarding you for hoping, even though that hope is unfounded. You're chasing a feeling. The high of believing maybe this is happening. Maybe things are changing. Maybe he's starting to see you differently. That feeling, that rush of hope and possibility, it's intoxicating. And you've learned that you can get that feeling just by staying close to him, by being available, by keeping the option open in your mind even when reality keeps proving it's not an option at all. The almost is seductive. Almost lovers. Almost more than friends. Almost something real. Almost what you need. That almost feels so close to what you want that you convince yourself you can reach it if you just try a little harder. Stretch a little further. Wait a little longer. Research on emotional attachment shows that uncertainty intensifies feelings. When you're sure about something, the emotional response stabilizes. But when you're uncertain, your emotions stay heightened. The not knowing whether he might love you keeps your feelings intense. If you knew for certain he never would, you could grieve and move on. But the maybe keeps you stuck in this heightened emotional state that feels significant, even though it's just painful. You're afraid to let go because what if you give up right before it was going to happen? What if you walk away and next week he was going to realize he loves you? You'll have wasted all this time waiting just to leave before the payoff. So you stay. Even though rationally you know that's not how it works, that prolonging your pain isn't going to magically make him love you, but the fear of missing out on the possibility keeps you trapped. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action. You've already invested so much time, so much emotion, so much of yourself into this. Walking away feels like wasting all of that investment. So you keep investing more, hoping to eventually recoup your losses, even though continuing to invest is just creating more loss. Psychologists note that people often stay in situations that aren't good for them because leaving feels like admitting failure, admitting you were wrong to hope, admitting all that time was wasted, admitting you loved someone who never loved you back. And those admissions are painful. So painful that staying stuck feels easier than facing the truth and starting to heal. You're addicted to the version of him you created, the version that might love you, the version you're hoping he'll become. You're not even addicted to the real him anymore. You're addicted to the fantasy of what this could be if only he felt differently. If only he saw you. If only. And like any addict, you make excuses. You rationalize. You minimize the pain and maximize the rare good moments. You tell yourself it's not that bad, that you can handle it, that you're choosing to stay because you want to, not because you're stuck. But addiction is always a choice that doesn't feel like a choice. You want to leave, but you can't. That's the definition of being hooked on something that's hurting you. Research on breaking addictive patterns emphasizes the importance of removing access to the addictive substance. But how do you remove access to a person, especially if they're in your life, in your friend group, at your work, or school? You can't physically avoid them entirely. So you have to find ways to create emotional distance, even when physical distance isn't possible. And that's incredibly hard when your brain is still seeking out any interaction with them as a potential hit of the high you're addicted to. You check your phone constantly, hoping for a message from him. That constant checking is compulsive behavior. You can't help it. Even when you know rationally he's probably not going to text, you still check, just in case. Because the anticipation gives you something. The possibility, the maybe, the almost. Studies show that compulsive checking behaviors activate reward pathways in the brain, even when no actual reward is received. Just the act of checking gives you a small dopamine release. So you're training your brain to keep checking by rewarding yourself for the behavior itself, regardless of the outcome. You interpret everything as a sign. He liked your post, that means something. He asked how you are, that's significant. He made eye contact, that's progress. And you're reading meaning into meaningless actions because you need to believe you're getting closer to what you want, even when you're not, even when nothing's actually changing. You create evidence of progress where none exists because your addicted brain needs to believe you're moving toward the reward. The crash after a high is brutal. When you have a good interaction with him, you feel amazing, euphoric, like everything's possible, like this is it. But then hours or days pass with no contact and you crash. Hard. The high wears off and reality comes back and you remember that nothing's really changed. And that crash makes you desperate for another high, another interaction, another hit of almost. Research on emotional regulation shows that this pattern of highs and crashes is destabilizing and leads to increased anxiety and depression. Your emotional state becomes dependent on external validation from someone who doesn't consistently provide it. You lose the ability to regulate your own emotions because you're constantly at the mercy of his unpredictable attention. Breaking an addiction requires acknowledging you have one, admitting that what you're doing isn't healthy, that you're not in control, that you need help, or a change, or distance, or something different than what you've been doing. And that admission is hard, especially when the addiction looks like love, when you can justify it as just caring about someone, when you can tell yourself you're being patient and loyal instead of acknowledging you're stuck in an unhealthy pattern that's consuming your life. You need to go cold turkey. That's what works with addiction. And complete cessation of contact with the addictive substance. For you, that means stopping all unnecessary contact with him. No checking his social media, no reaching out first, no making yourself available, no feeding the addiction with even small interactions. Complete distance until your brain rewires and stops seeking the high from him. Studies on addiction recovery emphasize that the first few weeks are the hardest. Withdrawal is painful. You'll feel worse before you feel better. You'll crave contact with him intensely. Your brain will give you 1,000 reasons why you need to break the no contact rule. Just one text, just checking in, just being a friend. But those are your addicted brain's tactics, trying to get you to relapse. And if you give in, you reset the withdrawal process and have to start over. The truth is, you're not in love in a healthy way. You're in obsession disguised as love. You're in addiction wearing the face of devotion, and you won't be able to truly heal until you acknowledge that. Until you admit that what you're doing to yourself, staying attached to someone who doesn't want you, isn't noble or romantic or even really love. It's self-destructive behavior that you've rationalized because it feels intense, and that intensity feels meaningful. Real love, healthy love, doesn't feel like addiction. It feels like peace, like safety, like home. It doesn't put you on an emotional roller coaster, doesn't make you constantly question your worth, doesn't require you to beg for scraps of attention, doesn't keep you stuck in almost for months or years. You deserve better than almost, better than maybe, better than someday. You deserve someone who chooses you fully, consistently, without hesitation. And you won't find that person while you're still addicted to someone who's never going to give you what you need. You have to break the addiction first. Have to detox from him. Have to let your brain and heart reset so you can see clearly again and make choices from a place of health instead of desperation. It's going to be hard, probably the hardest thing you've done. But staying addicted is harder in the long run. Staying stuck is harder on your soul. Staying attached to almost is harder on your heart than the pain of letting go would be. And you already know that. Some part of you already knows that continuing down this path only leads to more pain. But knowing and doing are different things. And doing, making the choice to break the addiction and walk away, that takes courage you might not feel ready for yet. But you'll get there. Eventually, the pain of staying will become greater than the fear of leaving. Eventually, you'll hit rock bottom with this addiction and realize you can't keep living like this. Can't keep giving yourself to someone who doesn't want you. Can't keep hoping for something that isn't going to happen. And that realization, painful as it is, will be the beginning of your freedom. Grieving someone who was never yours. The hardest grief is grieving someone who was never yours. Mourning a relationship that never existed. Missing something you never actually had. People don't understand this kind of loss. They tell you to get over it because you were never together. But that doesn't make it hurt less. Sometimes it makes it hurt more. Because what you're grieving isn't just him. You're grieving the possibility, the potential, the future you imagined, the relationship you saw so clearly in your mind that it felt real, even though it never existed outside your imagination. You built something in your heart, and now you have to tear it down, and there's grief in that destruction, even if the thing you built was never actually there. Research on grief shows that loss of anticipated futures can be just as painful as loss of actualized relationships. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what was and what could have been when it comes to processing loss. The pain is real, even if the relationship wasn't. You're mourning the version of him you fell in love with, the one you created, the one who might have loved you back if circumstances were different, if timing was different, if you were different. That version is dying in your mind, and you have to let it die, and that feels like losing someone even though that someone never really existed. There's no closure in unrequited love. That's what makes the grief so hard. No conversation where things end. No breakup to mark the finish. No clear moment where the relationship is over because the relationship never officially began. So when do you stop hoping? When do you allow yourself to grieve? When is it okay to move on? Studies on ambiguous loss show that grief without clear endings is more difficult to process than grief with defined conclusions. Your brain needs closure to begin healing. But with unrequited love, you have to create your own closure because he's not going to give it to you. He's not going to sit you down and say, "This isn't going to happen." Or he's just going to keep living his life while you're stuck trying to figure out when to stop waiting. You're grieving alone. That's another thing that makes this harder. When a relationship ends, both people grieve. There's shared acknowledgement of the loss. But with unrequited love, only you're grieving. He's fine. He's unchanged. He probably doesn't even know there's anything to grieve. So you're processing this loss by yourself with no one to share the burden. And people don't validate your grief because they don't see it as a real loss. They think you're overreacting, making too big a deal of something that was nothing. They don't understand that to you it wasn't nothing. It was everything. The fact that it only existed in your heart doesn't make it less real to you. Doesn't make the loss less devastating. So research on social support during grief emphasizes its importance for healing. But what happens when your loss isn't recognized as legitimate? When people minimize your pain? When you can't talk about what you're going through because nobody gets it? You end up grieving in silence, suffering alone, pretending you're fine when you're falling apart. You have to mourn the future you imagined, all the plans you made in your head, all the experiences you thought you'd share, all the moments you dreamed about that will never happen. You built an entire relationship in your mind, and now you have to accept that none of it was real, that it was all fantasy. And letting go of that fantasy feels like letting go of hope itself. The grief comes in waves. Some days you think you're okay. You've accepted it. You're moving on. And then something reminds you of him and the grief hits fresh like it just happened. Like you just realized he doesn't love you for the first time even though you've known for months. The pain doesn't follow a linear path. It circles back, repeats, crashes over you when you least expect it. Studies on the grieving process show that grief isn't linear. There's no timeline, no set number of stages you move through in order. It's messy and unpredictable, and sometimes you think you're healing and then you're back in the thick of it again. And that's normal. That's how grief works, even grief over something that never was. You're mourning the person you were when you still had hope, the version of yourself who believed love was possible with him, who thought maybe someday, who kept trying and hoping and waiting. That person is dying too. And changing into someone more realistic, more guarded, more aware that wanting something doesn't make it happen. And losing that hopeful version of yourself is its own kind of grief. Part of you might be grieving the friendship too. Because even if you want to stay friends with him, it'll never be the same. Not for you. You can't unknow what you know, can't unfeel what you felt. The friendship is tainted now by your unspoken feelings. And if you choose to cut contact completely, then you're losing him entirely, losing his presence in your life, losing all the good parts along with the pain, and that's a tangible loss on top of the imaginary one. Research on complicated grief shows that losses that are invalidated or unacknowledged tend to be harder to process. When you can't openly grieve, when you can't talk about your pain, and when you have to pretend you're fine, the grief gets stuck inside you. It has nowhere to go, no outlet. So it just sits there, heavy and unresolved, making it harder to heal. You might feel guilty for grieving. Guilty for being this upset over someone who was never your partner. Guilty for taking so long to get over it. Guilty for caring this much when maybe you shouldn't have cared at all. But grief isn't something you control. It's something that happens to you. And shame about your grief only makes it worse. The anger comes too. That's part of grief. Anger at him for not loving you back. Anger at yourself for falling for him. Anger at the situation. Anger at the unfairness of one-sided love. Anger at everyone who told you to move on like it was easy. Anger is normal. It's part of processing loss. Let yourself be angry. It's healthier than pretending everything's fine. Studies show that suppressed grief can lead to depression, anxiety, and physical health problems. You have to let yourself feel it. All of it. The sadness, the anger, the loss, the emptiness. Trying to skip grief or rush through it or pretend it's not there, that only extends the healing process. You have to go through it to get through it. You're grieving your innocence too, your belief that love conquers all, that if you love someone enough, they'll love you back, that good people get good outcomes, that the universe is fair. Unrequited love shatters those beliefs, forces you to accept that sometimes things just don't work out no matter how much you want them to. That loving someone doesn't guarantee being loved back. That you can do everything right and still lose. And losing those beliefs, that innocence, that's a grief of its own. There's grief in accepting reality. And finally, truly accepting that it's not going to happen. That he's never going to love you. That this thing you hoped for so desperately is never going to materialize. That you wasted time and energy and pieces of your heart on something that was never real. Acceptance is necessary for healing, but it's also painful. It's the final death of hope. And hope, even painful hope, is hard to kill. Research on acceptance in grief shows that it's not about being okay with what happened. It's about acknowledging what is. You don't have to like it. Don't have to think it's fair. Don't have to stop hurting. You just have to stop fighting against reality. Stop trying to change what can't be changed. Stop hoping for something different. And that act of acceptance, of letting go of the fight, that's when healing can begin. You might need to grieve multiple times. Once when you first realize he doesn't love you. Again when you accept it. Again when you see him move on with someone else. Again when you're healing and something triggers you back into the pain. Each time you think you're done grieving, something might bring it back. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Grief isn't something you do once and then it's over. It's something you carry and slowly learn to live with until one day you realize it's not as heavy as it used to be. The grief will change shape over time. It won't always be this acute stabbing pain. Eventually, it'll become a dull ache, then a wistful sadness, then a distant memory of something that hurt once but doesn't hurt the same way anymore. You'll get there. It just takes time. More time than you want. More time than feels fair. But you will get there. Studies on healing from loss emphasize that grief ends not when you forget, but when you can remember without it destroying you. When you can think about him without pain. When you can wish him well sincerely. When you can look back on this time and understand it was painful, but it's not painful anymore. That's when you know you've healed. When the grief has completed its process and left you changed but intact, you're allowed to grieve someone who was never yours. Your pain is valid even if the relationship wasn't. The love you felt was real. The hope was real. The loss is real. Don't let anyone minimize that. Don't minimize it yourself. Honor your grief. Give it space. Let it be what it is. And trust that even though it feels endless right now, it will end. The grief will pass. The pain will fade. And you'll be okay again. Different, maybe. Changed by the experience. But okay. The slow process of letting go. Letting go isn't one decision. It's 1,000 tiny decisions made over and over until eventually they stick. It's choosing not to text him for the 100th time. Not checking his social media for the 1,000th time. Not reading into his words when you do interact. Not hoping every time your phone buzzes that it's him. It's all these little moments of resistance against what you want to do, what you're used to doing, what your heart keeps telling you to do. Some days you'll be strong. You'll make all the right choices. You'll maintain distance. You'll focus on yourself. You'll feel like you're finally moving on. And then other days you'll slip. You'll look at his profile. You'll send that text. You'll let yourself hope again. And you'll feel like you're back at square one. But you're not. Each step forward counts, even if you take some steps back. Healing isn't linear. Letting go happens in spirals, not straight lines. Research on breaking emotional attachments shows that repeated exposure to the decision to let go eventually rewires your brain's automatic responses. The more times you choose not to reach out, the easier it becomes to not reach out. The neural pathways associated with seeking him out start to weaken, while new pathways form around self-sufficiency and moving forward. The first step is deciding you want to let go. Actually deciding, not just thinking you should. There's a difference. And you've probably thought you should move on many times. Maybe people have told you to. Maybe part of you knows you need to, but Thinking you should isn't the same as actually wanting to. You have to reach a point where you genuinely want freedom more than you want him, where the pain of holding on becomes greater than the fear of letting go. That decision often comes after hitting rock bottom, after one too many disappointments, after looking at yourself and not recognizing who you've become, after realizing you've sacrificed too much of yourself for someone who isn't sacrificing anything for you. The decision to let go usually happens when you're exhausted, when you can't do this anymore, when you're finally more tired of the pain than you are scared of the unknown. Studies show that readiness for change is a crucial factor in actually changing. You can know you need to do something for months or years before you're actually ready to do it. And trying to force letting go before you're ready often doesn't work. You'll just create internal conflict. Tell yourself you're moving on while simultaneously holding on. You have to wait for genuine readiness, for the moment when your heart finally agrees with your head that this needs to end. Once you decide, you have to take action. Distance is essential. You can't let go of someone you're still constantly in contact with. You need space. Physical space if possible. Emotional space, definitely. That means reducing or eliminating contact. Unfollowing on social media. Not going places you know he'll be. Not putting yourself in positions where you have to interact. This feels impossible at first, like cutting off your own air supply. Your brain is so used to constant connection, constant monitoring, constant hoping, that the distance creates anxiety. You'll feel like you're missing out, like you need to know what he's doing, like something terrible will happen if you're not paying attention to his life. But those are just withdrawal symptoms. Your addicted brain panicking at the loss of its fix. Push through it. The anxiety passes. Research on no-contact periods after breakups shows they significantly improve emotional recovery. And even though you weren't technically in a relationship, the same principle applies. You can't heal a wound you keep reopening. You can't get over someone you're still emotionally engaged with daily. So distance doesn't make the heart grow fonder when the heart needs to move on. It makes moving on possible. You need to redirect your attention. All the energy you were putting into him, into analyzing him and hoping about him and thinking about him, needs to go somewhere else. Preferably back into yourself. This is the time to focus on your own life, your own goals, your own healing. Fill the space he occupied with things that actually nourish you instead of draining you. Pick up old hobbies you abandoned because you were too busy pining after him. Reconnect with friends you neglected. Start something new. Pour yourself into work or school or creative projects. The goal isn't to distract yourself from the pain. It's to build a life that doesn't revolve around him. Had to remember that you existed before him, and you'll continue to exist after him. Studies on coping with loss emphasize the importance of meaning-making and personal growth. People who use loss as an opportunity to develop themselves, to discover new interests, to deepen other relationships, they tend to recover better than people who just sit in the pain waiting for it to pass. You have to actively participate in your healing. Have to consciously build something new instead of just mourning what you're losing. You'll have to challenge your thoughts about him. Your brain has been running the same stories for so long they feel like truth. He's perfect for me. We'd be so good together. He's going to realize eventually. These are beliefs you've reinforced over and over until they became automatic. And they're not true. They're stories your hopeful heart created. You need to start questioning them. talking back to them, replacing them with more realistic thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy techniques are useful here. When you catch yourself thinking we're meant it to be, challenge it. Says who? Based on what evidence? He doesn't love you back. Maybe that's evidence you're not meant to be. When you think he's perfect, list his flaws. Real ones you've been ignoring. Remind yourself you've idealized him. The person you think he is might not be the person he actually is. Research shows that thought challenging is effective in reducing obsessive thinking patterns. You can't control the first thought that pops into your head. That's automatic. But you can control how you respond to that thought. Whether you believe it and follow it down the rabbit hole, or whether you acknowledge it and choose a different thought instead. That control, that ability to redirect your own thinking, that's crucial for letting go. You have to stop romanticizing the pain. Stop telling yourself that suffering for love is noble. That waiting proves how much you care, that your loyalty will be rewarded, that your patience means something. All you're doing is trying to make the pain mean something so it feels less pointless. But pain isn't meaningful just because it's pain. Sometimes pain is just pain. Sometimes suffering is just suffering. And staying in it longer doesn't make it transform into something beautiful. Let yourself be angry at him, for real. Not the productive anger that pushes you to change. The raw, unfair, irrational anger that he doesn't love you back. That he had the audacity to be kind to you without wanting you. That he existed in your life and broke your heart without ever knowing or caring. Be angry, even though it's not his fault, even though he didn't do anything wrong. Be angry anyway, because anger is part of grief and you're allowed to feel it. Studies on anger in the grieving process show that it's a natural and necessary stage. Anger provides energy, motivation, a reason to take action instead of just staying stuck in sadness. Let yourself be mad at him, mad at yourself, mad at the situation. Let that anger fuel your decision to walk away, to stop giving him power over your emotional state, to reclaim your life from this one-sided situation. You'll have moments where you slip, where you go back, where you reach out or look him up or let yourself hope again. Don't beat yourself up. Healing isn't perfect. You're breaking an addiction, retraining your brain, learning new patterns. Of course you'll have setbacks. What matters is what you do after the setback. Do you stay stuck or do you get back on track? Do you use it as an excuse to give up or as information about what triggers you? Every time you slip and then recover, you're building resilience, proving to yourself that you can mess up and still be okay. That one mistake doesn't erase all your progress, that you're stronger than you think. The slips become less frequent over time. The recoveries become faster. Eventually, you'll go days without thinking about him, then weeks. Then you'll realize one day that you didn't think about him all day, and it didn't even occur to you that you hadn't thought about him. A research on habit change shows it takes time for new patterns to become automatic. Estimates range from weeks to months, depending on the complexity of the habit. For something as emotionally entrenched as unrequited love, you're probably looking at months. That doesn't mean you'll be in active pain for months. The pain lessens gradually. But the process of truly, completely letting go, of breaking all the mental habits around him, that takes sustained effort over time. Let yourself feel sad about letting go. It's okay to mourn what could have been, even as you accept it won't be. You can be sad about losing the hope, while also relieved to be free from the torture of hoping. Emotions aren't logical. You can feel multiple things at once. Let yourself be sad without letting that sadness pull you back into the cycle. One day you'll realize you're okay. Not perfect. Not completely over it. But okay. You'll realize you went through something hard and it changed you, and you're still here. Still standing. Still capable of love, even though love hurt you. That realization that you survived the pain and came out the other side, that's when you know you're really letting go. You're building a life without him. Not a life where he doesn't exist, you can't control that, but a life where he's not the center, where your happiness doesn't depend on him, where you're okay regardless of what he does or doesn't do. That's the goal of letting go. Not to hate him, not to never care again, just to reach a place where you're okay without him, where you're whole on your own. Studies on emotional resilience show that going through difficult experiences and successfully coping with them builds confidence in your ability to handle future challenges. Letting go of him is teaching you that you can survive heartbreak, that you're stronger than you thought, that you can choose yourself even when it's hard. Those lessons will serve you for the rest of your life in ways that go far beyond this specific situation. The process is slow, frustratingly slow. You want to be over it now, want to fast forward through the painful part, but you can't. You have to go through it step by step, day by day, choice by choice. And that's okay. That's how healing works. Slow, messy, non-linear, but eventually effective. Trust the process even when you can't see the progress. And trust that you're moving forward even when it feels like you're stuck. Trust that letting go is happening even if it's happening slower than you'd like. What comes after all of it? After the hoping and the hurting and the letting go, after you finally reach the other side of this, what then? Who are you when you're not defined by loving someone who doesn't love you back? What does your life look like when it's no longer organized around him? At first, it feels empty. There's this void where all your thoughts about him used to be. All that space in your mind and heart that was occupied by analyzing and hoping and waiting. Suddenly, it's just empty. And you're not sure what to fill it with. You're not sure who you are without this thing that consumed you for so long. Research on identity after loss shows that major emotional experiences often become part of how we see ourselves. You've been the girl who loved him for however long this has lasted. That became part of your identity. And now you're letting go of that part. You're becoming someone new. Someone who survived unrequited love instead of someone who's currently living it. That transition, that identity shift, it's disorienting. You start to see yourself more clearly, without the lens of loving him distorting everything. You remember who you were before him, or maybe you discover who you are for the first time because you lost yourself so completely in him that you forgot. Either way, there's this process of reclaiming yourself, piecing together the person you want to be independent of anyone else. You notice how much energy you have now. All that emotional energy that was going toward him, it's yours again. And you don't quite know what to do with it. You're used to spending it on someone else, giving it away. Now you have to learn to invest it in yourself, in your own growth and healing and future. That feels selfish at first, self-focused, but it's not selfish, it's necessary. Studies on self-focus after heartbreak show that turning your attention inward, prioritizing your own needs and growth, is essential for recovery. You can't pour from an empty cup. Can't love others healthily if you're not loving yourself. So this period after letting go, it's your time to be self-focused, to build yourself back up, to become the person you were always capable of being when you weren't shrinking yourself to fit into his life. You start to see him differently, more clearly. Once the fog of idealization lifts, you see his actual flaws, the ways he wasn't perfect, the ways you two weren't actually compatible, the red flags you ignored because you wanted it to work, and you think, what was I even doing? Why did I waste so much time on someone who wasn't right for me? That clarity is both liberating and frustrating. Liberating because you can finally see the truth. Frustrating because you could have seen it sooner if you'd been willing to look. But you weren't ready then. You are now, and that's what matters. Not how long it took you to get here, just that you got here. Research on perspective gaining after romantic loss shows that most people eventually reach a point where they can see the situation more objectively. The emotional charge fades. The memories become less painful and more factual. So you can think about him without your heart racing, can remember the good parts without wanting him back, can acknowledge the bad parts without hating yourself for not seeing them sooner. That objective perspective is a sign of true healing. You might feel embarrassed about how much time and energy you invested in someone who didn't love you back. You might look back and cringe at some of the things you did or said, the ways you made yourself available, the dignity you lost in pursuit of someone who wasn't pursuing you. That embarrassment is normal, but don't let it turn into shame. Don't punish yourself for being human, for hoping, for wanting love, for trying. Everyone who's ever loved has done things they're not proud of, made themselves more available than they should have, ignored red flags, held on too long. You're not unique in that. You're just human. And being human means sometimes making choices driven by hope instead of logic. You did the best you could with what you knew and felt at the time. That's all anyone can do. Studies on self-compassion after heartbreak show that people who treat themselves with kindness rather than criticism recover faster and with better emotional outcomes. Instead of beating yourself up for the time you wasted, acknowledge that you are learning. Learning what you don't want. Learning red flags. Learning that you can survive pain. Nothing is wasted if you learn from it. You'll be different after this. Changed. Parts of you that were soft might be harder now. Parts that were open might be more cautious. You might guard your heart more carefully. Take longer to trust, and be more skeptical of potential love interests. And that's okay. That's self-protection. You're allowed to protect yourself after being hurt, but don't let the changes be only negative. Don't let this experience close you off completely. Don't decide that love isn't worth the risk because this particular love hurt. You're allowed to be changed by pain without being destroyed by it. Allowed to be more careful without being cynical. Allowed to protect yourself without building walls so high nobody can reach you. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that difficult experiences often lead to positive changes in perspective, relationships, and personal strength. Many people report that going through heartbreak made them stronger, more empathetic, clearer about what they want, better at setting boundaries. Pain can be transformative if you let it teach you instead of just breaking you. You'll know what you want more clearly now, what you need from a partner, what you won't tolerate, what real love should feel like versus what infatuation feels like. You've learned the difference between someone who likes you and someone who loves you, between someone who's interested and someone who's just being friendly, between someone who's emotionally available and someone who's not ready. Those lessons are invaluable. They'll protect you in future relationships, help you recognize real compatibility instead of just chemistry, help you walk away sooner when someone isn't treating you right, help you value yourself enough to require reciprocation instead of accepting one-sided dynamics. And studies on relationship readiness show that people who've processed past pain and learned from it tend to make better relationship choices in the future. They're less likely to repeat unhealthy patterns, more likely to recognize red flags early, more confident in their own worth and therefore less tolerant of being undervalued. Your experience with unrequited love, as painful as it was, is making you wiser about love. One day you'll be grateful this didn't work out, not because you'll stop caring that it hurt, but because you'll meet someone who chooses you back and you'll understand the difference. You'll feel what mutual love is actually like and realize what you had with him wasn't even close. You'll be grateful that door closed so a better one could open. That gratitude takes time. You're not there yet, and that's okay. So you don't have to be grateful for pain while you're still in it. You don't have to find meaning in suffering before you've healed. You're allowed to just be hurt for a while without trying to make it inspirational or educational or anything other than what it is, which is painful. But eventually, when enough time has passed and enough healing has happened, you'll look back and think, thank God that didn't work out. Thank God he didn't love me back, because that meant I was available when the right person came along, and you'll mean it. Not as a coping mechanism, not as something you're telling yourself to feel better, but as a genuine feeling of relief that this particular story didn't end the way you thought you wanted it to. Research on meaning-making after loss shows that most people eventually find ways to integrate difficult experiences into their life narrative in ways that feel meaningful rather than just painful. The story stops being, I was rejected, and he broke my heart, and becomes, I learned what I don't want, so I'd recognize what I do want. The meaning shift happens slowly, but it happens. You're going to be okay, not okay, like nothing happened, okay, like you went through something hard and it changed you, and you're still standing, still capable of love, still believing in the possibility of finding someone who loves you back, still hopeful despite the pain hope has caused you, still you, just a version that's been through the fire and come out different but intact. The person you're becoming because of this experience, she's stronger than the person you were before, more resilient, more self-aware, more capable of recognizing what she deserves. That person is worth the pain it took to become her. Not that the pain was necessary or good, but that you survived it and grew through it, and became someone who won't accept less than she deserves ever again. Studies on resilience show that people who've survived emotional hardship often develop a confidence in their own ability to handle difficulty. You know now that you can survive heartbreak, that you can feel something intensely painful and not be destroyed by it, that you're stronger than you thought, and that knowledge, that confidence in your own resilience, that's something nobody can take from you. This experience taught you about yourself, what you're capable of feeling, how much you can endure, where your limits are, how strong you have to be to choose yourself, even when every part of you wants to choose someone else. These aren't lessons you wanted to learn, but now that you have them, they're yours. They're part of your foundation, part of what makes you who you're becoming. And who you're becoming is someone who knows her worth, who won't beg for love, who recognizes that the right person won't make her question herself constantly, who understands that love should add to her life, not consume it, who's capable of walking away from almost to make space for something real. That person, the one you're growing into, she's going to be okay. Better than okay. She's going to be whole. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for listening. I know how heavy this is, and how much it hurts to hear your own experience reflected back. But you're not alone in feeling this way. You never were. And you're going to get through it. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One step toward yourself and away from someone who is never going to love you the way you deserve. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. And turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything. Take care of yourself. Be gentle with yourself. And remember, you're worthy of being loved back. You always have been.